And I'll tell you a wee story. I was thinking sort of going way back when Patrick started, but this wasn't like long after I started with what was Pacific Retail Group then, and this was our old building down in Montreal Street. There was a little street ran around the back called St David Street.
Yeah.
And I was parking my car one day, and I actually hit the car in front as I was parking. And well, I had kind of clipped it. And as I kind of continued, I parked, and I looked in the car in front, and there was a person sitting in it. I thought, oh God, bugger, I've hit this car, and the guy's actually in it. And he was looking at me in the mirror, and I thought, oh, do I go and say something? And he didn't get out. I thought, oh, no, I won't. No harm, no foul, sort of thing. And so I got out, and he still didn't move, and I went into work, put my bag down, turned the PC on, went to get a cup of tea, and I could hear someone talking out the front, and I went and put my head around the corner, and there was the guy I'd hit standing in reception, and I thought, oh my God, he's followed me into work. And it was Patrick. And he took me over and introduced us, and to his credit, he never said anything, and neither did I. So 13 years later, I bought a scratch repair kit. And the last day, I'm just going to say sorry for hitting your car.
Actually, I punched the wrong guy. So, thank you.
But he didn't say a word. Yeah. It's been a pleasure, Patrick. We've had sort of good time working together for
it's been a long time.
13 years. He's been good. So one other thing I can remember when we had working in stores for a couple of days, which didn't kind of fit quite well with a lot of developers being quieter. It was quite stressful to have to actually go into stores and talk to people. Except for Patrick, who actually got offered a job by the store manager. He was actually so good at it. So you're kind of an odd programmer. We do have a store in Whangarei, so if you want to kind of moonlight, you probably might get a job there as well. And hopefully some work for us over the next few months. Yeah, we will as well. So maybe not quite the end. So it's been a pleasure, Patrick. Karen, nice working with you. Oh, nice. Couple of wee gifts as well. So from the company, and I know that was something that you wanted. I'm not sure why a guy on leave wants a watch. On retirement wants a watch. But, maybe when you're fishing.
A solar powered watch.
Cool. Nice one.
And traditional whip round from your work colleagues. So that's
$2.
$2.
Yeah. Each.
Voucher to go and get those last few things before your card runs out.
Thank you. Thank you. Now,
and
you want
something for you as well.
Yeah, but more personal. That's from all of us.
Undies?
No, I know you asked.
Thank you.
No.
Shall I open it?
Yes, please do. Don't jiggle around too much.
We don't recycle the wrapping paper, do we?
You didn't have to rip it open.
Yeah.
It's all original.
Come on, show it this way.
It's all original
It'd be
work.
nice if you could read it out.
It's just one of those standard Chinese things with a bunch of Chinese people standing there. Do you see it?
You're not going to read
That's
it.
nice.
I haven't put names
Thank you.
to the poetry,
Thank you.
Patrick, but quite a few people contributed.
My memory's going anyway. So. This is nice. This is that's lovely. Thank you. Right. Now, you won't believe this, but I actually didn't know what to say. So I wrote a 17-page speech.
Right. Can we help you with that?
No, there's just one word on each page.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
What font size is it?
We have a lot to get through, so please pay attention. I'll be asking questions at the end. So I didn't really know what to say. There was a lot of things I could have said, like, oh, it's been good to work here and all that stuff, but I didn't, so I thought I might tell you a bit of a story. So I'm going to start off with a poem. All good things start with a poem. So here we go. When you are young, they give you some pills to see heaven with. It's not until you've been there a few times that you notice that there are holes in the floor, rats in the walls, the roof leaks, and no one wants the mortgage. As a child, I never made it with the kids that had to play in the garden or couldn't go beyond the road. Their mothers would take one look at me and say, Jeremy is going to have a nap now, Patrick. Maybe you could come back another day. And we both knew what that meant. As a child, I understood instinctively that what you see on the outside of a person is shaped by what is on the inside. So poor Jeremy and a few others. So I hung out with the boys that did things. I liked the kids that not only did things, but weren't afraid to try something new. Those kids were different. We'd go down the woods, over the paddocks, exploring quarries, factories, walls, anywhere that looked interesting and that we could get to, until we were inevitably chased out. Only when I got older and looked back did I realise that my childhood was spent almost entirely in the company of dysfunctional delinquents. And instead of having inner landscapes, theirs was more a case of having dystopian ruins. Drunken fathers, regular beatings, neglectful mothers, and I guess for them, they couldn't get far enough away from their homes, whereas I just like going places, seeing new things. Now, this is a sketch that Monty Python did. I can't remember when, but they stole it. I only just found out. They stole it from a French anarchist group who called themselves the soon-to-be fashionable situationists. So the sketch goes. There's two cowboys sitting around the campfire, and there's that cowboy kind of harmonica music playing in the background. And one cowboy turns to the other and says, "What do you do, Hank?" And Hank replies, "Well, partner, I'm into reification." And the first cowboy says, "Reification? Man, that sounds like it's very serious work with thick books and a lot of paper spread out on a big table." And Hank says, "No, mainly I just drift from place to place." That went down well. So then I went to school and all that stuff, grew up, and we moved a lot when I was a kid. So there was lots of houses, lots of schools, and I pretty much lost contact with all the friends I ever had and any that I made along the way. And I never realised at the time what an asset this would turn out to be. My father, God bless him, never had any skills apart from the odd bit of stealing. His standard speech to all 5 sons when they came to the end of that horror called high school was really simple. "Son, learn a trade or go in the army." So I served my apprenticeship and I did well, but I never lost my interest in other things. More to the point, the things that were pointed out to me as being important, they never really struck me that way. If it was that important, then how come the people do it didn't seem too excited? And how come the people that had done it seemed really boring? So if you like, I was more interested in what I could see out the side windows instead of through the main windscreen. So now we've got another one. If life is the journey that every man makes to meet his God, and you arrive at your journey's end on the charter flight of drugs, with the package tour of religion, or by the bus trip of mysticism, then whilst on that journey, had you have looked out the window, you would have seen Salvador Dali on his bike. So I kind of said goodbye to all my family, because I like my family, so I did say goodbye to them. And I left everything behind, and all my acquaintances, and remember, it goes without saying, in those days there was nothing. There was no internet, there was no mobile phones, there was nothing. I don't know if you understand that, there was just nothing. You could write a letter if you could write. Anyway, so when you left places like they kind of disappeared. So this is where, okay, so then what was, I went to London, right, and I kind of hung around, and I met a lot of people, interesting people. And then, so this is where this goes. According to the media, a lot of people getting drunk and going berserk is anarchism. It's not. It's hooliganism. That's what it is. Anarchy is about taking personal responsibility for yourself and your actions. As Bob Dylan said, if you want to live outside the law, you must be honest. Anarchy is about taking action instead of petitioning another person or a super being to act or intercede on your behalf. Anarchy is really about being self-reliant, and yet, in this society at the same time, we're all totally reliant on the kindness of strangers. When you flush the toilet, there is a stranger on the other end taking care of your business. So it really is about being responsible, taking care of yourself, and then taking care of others. So I approached an organisation that was called the Anarchist Collective. They were in Kilburn at the time. And it wasn't a backpackers or a DOS house or a home for wayward children. It was a collective. That meant that everything was done collectively. So, but before you could approach them and you could petition them or make a case as to why they should allow you to join their collective. So I did. So I approached them and said, I want to kind of come here. And they said, well, we're having a big meeting tonight. Come back at 6 o'clock. So I did. So my pitch was that I wanted to know what it was like to be addressed and known as someone other than myself. So therefore, I wanted to join the collective as a person without a name. And they said, well, what will we call you? And I said, well, call me what you like. I don't mind. So they said, okay. So on that basis, I was accepted and I became a part of the anarchist collective. And at first it was difficult, as I was referred to by various names, by various people at various times, and sometimes the same person would call me a different name one day to the next. So it was really difficult to know. Nobody really knew if I was being referred to, or when, or how. So, but anyway, after a little while, you see, I wasn't sure what I expected to happen, or how I expected that to pan out. But what happened was, almost by unconscious collective agreement, I became known to everyone as Mr. X. And so I became Mr. X.
Right.
And I stayed there a while. I had a life here, and I knew people, and they knew me, and we did things together, and I was Mr. X. And it was like, would you like a cup of tea, Mr. X? Hey, Mr. X, if you're going down the shop, can you buy me a packet of fags? And have you seen Julie today, Mr. X? She was looking for you. And it was all said with the same fluency as if my name was Paul, or Gabriel, or Lola. Eventually, I left the anarchist collective to many fond farewells and have a good time, Mr. X, see you again, Mr. X. And I went to another place. I went to a town called Colchester. And I was there and I got to know people and I kind of joined in. And so I was in Colchester and I had a life there and I knew people and they knew me and we did things together. And I was not Mr. X, I was someone else now. And then one day, a year or two later, we went to a music festival. Like when I was younger, there was lots of music festivals. So we went to this place, it was a really hot sunny day, and we were walking through this jam-packed crowd of people trying to find a bit of shade. And all of a sudden someone shouts out, "There's Mr. X!" And I turn around and there's the Anarchist Collective, complete with a big banner saying the Anarchist Collective. And so I kind of walked over there, we're shaking hands, everyone's, you know, all the hugging and the kissing and all that. But I turn around and there's all these people from Colchester and they're all just kind of looking at me like, Mr. X. So the thing is, you know me as Patrick Williams, and I truly am Patrick Williams, but I've not always been Patrick Williams. That was a bit, wasn't it? So then I left there, and I went to another town. I went to a town called Nottingham, and Nottingham's in the middle of England, it's miles from anywhere. And I went there, same sort of thing, I just went there, I didn't really know anyone, I went along, but I met this woman. And it was like, you know, the stars, the rockets, all that stuff. We just got on really, really well and we became fast friends. It was like, we were instant soulmates, like brother and sister. But she was part of the lesbian collective, so it really pissed her off. And at the same time, nobody liked me, right? Of all the people I knew, almost nobody liked me. No one trusted me. And it wasn't until later I found out they all thought I was an undercover cop. And that's the second time in my life that had happened to me. So we left and we went to another town. We went to a place called Brighton, which is down the south. So then we went down there and we gathered a lot of money. And then we went to another place called Bristol where we gathered even more money. And then we changed our names, we got new passports, and we left England. And we both knew the territory. We were now the map. So for around 4 years, we were together pretty much all the time. Like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, almost. And we travelled, we wandered all over Europe, we had a really good time. It was a bit strange at times, we did lots of good things. And then one day, we came to a fork in the road. And she took it. And she said to me, "I'm leaving, I'm going to become ordinary." And she walked out of my life. And you all have to say, "Ah." Oh, you were supposed to anyway. So I continued on for about another 3 years until I realised that once again I was surrounded by dysfunctional delinquents. But instead of children, these were fully grown men. They were drug dealers, junkies, 2 murderers, one who'd been convicted and one who was on sabbatical, restaurant owners, lawyers, aristocrats, artists of various persuasion, a gay theatre troupe, a Russian prince, that's what he said he was, and a psychologist. And for the record, I was none of those things. So I realised I realised I had nobody I could really call a friend. So I kind of worked out I'd not only come to the end of the road, I'd pretty much run off the map. I was stuck. So I was living in Holland at this point, and I lost my passport. And living in a foreign country without, it's a nightmare. So I lost my passport and I had to go to the British consulate to sort something out. As I was walking there, on the side of the road I found a pile of clothes. It's like they're brand new, been taken out of their rack and was piled up, and on the top was a pair of brown Italian leather shoes, really good quality. And I turned them over and the soles were unmarked, and they were my size. And I checked through the clothes. I took all my clothes off and I put all these clothes on. And it was magic. So I went to the British consulate, and what I did was I changed my name back to what it was in the very beginning, and I got a new passport. But I didn't know what to do, so it was in that period, that lacuna, that I went to see my friend who left me to become ordinary. And she said to me that pursuing the art of the ordinary was the hardest thing that anyone could ever undertake. And she said, I think you'd enjoy the challenge. This is about King Arthur, and see, my hands are shaking.
Yeah.
It's Alzheimer's, it's all right. This is about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. This is a story. King Arthur would take the knights one at a time into a very long room. At one end there was a black wall, and at one end there was a white wall. And he would take them in the room, and he would walk them around a bit, and he would say to them, the black wall represents ignorance or unenlightenment, and the other end represents enlightenment or illumination. So then he would walk them and he would stand them with their backs to the black wall facing the white wall, and he would say to them, right, close your eyes and then walk to where you think you are on the journey from ignorance to enlightenment. So what they used to do was they'd start off against the wall with their eyes shut. They would take a few places, some of them, and some of them would barely move at all, and others would stride off boldly, but then somewhere they would come to a stop. So he would go over to them, and he would say, right, keep your eyes closed, and he would grab them, and he would walk them round and round in circles. And then he would take them back, and he would stand them back to a wall, and he would say to them, without opening your eyes, tell me where you think you are. And they all said, I've got my back to the black wall, and I'm looking right down the room. And he would say, now open your eyes. And they would open their eyes, and they were standing with their backs to the white wall, looking down at the black. And he said to them, there is no journey. You're already illuminated. All you have to do is turn round. So I began another longer journey involving a new country, children, wives of one persuasion or another, and which many years later sees me here before you now. And I've often wondered what would have happened had I not left that life when I did. Some of those people are dead, mainly but not only the junkies. Some went to prison, and mainly not only the drug dealers. And I'm sure that some lived happily ever after. I have done so far. Now that may seem like a long way from here, but I look around me and I see not one dysfunctional delinquent. But I think there might be hope for one or two. Now, this is the last bit, really. So this is called Crow's Theology. It's written by a guy called Ted Hughes. So Crow realised that God loved him, otherwise he would have dropped dead, so that was proved. Crow reclined, marvelling on his heartbeat, and he realised that God spoke Crow. Just existing was his revelation. But what loved the stones and spoke stone? They seemed to exist too. And what spoke that strange silence after his clamour of cause faded? And what loved the shot pellets that dribbled from those strung-up mummifying crows? What spoke the silence of lead? And Crow realised there were two gods, one of them much bigger than the other, loving his enemies but having all the weapons. So this is pretty much it. So this is the last bit. There are some things I know to be true. When you walk through a door for the first time, the people you meet on the other side know nothing about you. You educate them about yourself, either by design or by default. We are more transparent than we realise. Others see us and forgive our failings more than we are grateful for. We do not all start from the same place. I've seen children from terrible backgrounds do amazing things. Unfortunately, they are the exception. Most of them end up doing terrible things to themselves and others. And it's only an accident at birth that we do not walk in those shoes. If you, like me, had the fortune to grow up in a good family, then anything that we gather as a result of that beginning is a gift. It's not ours as a right. As someone said, some people are born on third base and spend their whole lives convinced that they hit a triple to get there. So it's your duty to help those that are less fortunate than yourself. Your worth as a human being is measured by that and nothing else. The point being that good programmers do not go to heaven, only good human beings. Be kind to each other. Peace and goodbye.
Oh, thank you.